A common question has been, how do I actually train these things? I'll make a video dedicated to this topic, but I can give some basic stuff. So for perception, anytime you're playing the game, just visually focus on seeing their head as much as possible. I think if you haven't tried it, it sounds much more useless than it is, but when you're actually in the game and they're moving around, dodging you, and you're moving your crosshair, actually seeing their head is very hard to do sometimes. But there's other things you can do. You can do low contrast training. So if you're playing an aim trainer, you can make the target and the walls behind it a very, very similar color to where you can still clearly see the target, but when you try to do a run, you'll get a much lower score. You'll see what I'm talking about. You can also do 1v1s and add visual clutter intentionally. So in Overwatch, I'll do 1v1s on Workshop Island. I'll turn off player outlines, and then it becomes very hard to see. I'll do it on a few other maps as well, and that really tests your perception. For comprehension, you can have a partner or a bot do the specific patterns you find hard to hit. They should switch from something else into it, and then sit in it long enough for you to identify it and then switch back out. So they're basically doing mix-ups, but just slow enough that you can figure it out. I also made a few Kovac scenarios that target comprehension, namely the Book Club series. Book Club Intermediate, Advanced, and Advanced Blink are particularly good, but nothing will beat recreating the exact thing you find hard to hit in-game. For prediction, the only thing you can do is play against humans and try to feel them out. It can help to hard mirror with your own movement. That helps you isolate just feeling their intentions, but that one is basically just putting in the hours to 1v1 or maybe FFA, but I mean, you should really be doing 1v1s for this. Several people have asked, does this stuff actually apply outside of Overwatch? The answer to that is for sure yes, but the less they can dodge, the less you have to aim. So the less any aim concept is going to be relevant. In attack FPS, you might rely almost exclusively on prediction, for example, crosshair placement when rounding a corner to pre-aim, because there's not really any dodging, there's just hitting the first shot. However, people seem to have the misconception that it's Overwatch's instant excel that makes this stuff relevant, which is definitely not true, because this stuff applies just as well to Apex, Quake, Diabolical, Fortnite, any other shooter with a lot of movement. If you have any doubts about that, just the other day, one of the best hitscan players in Marvel Rivals, Sestroid, asked me to be his 1v1 partner, so he obviously feels it's worth training in that game as well. And one of my 1v1 partners in Overwatch a while back was Wind, who also won a Fortnite 1v1 tournament. And Apex players also run Vamp 1v1s, and I found that Apex players perform well in Overwatch 1v1s. For example, Mocad had excellent reading when I played against him. My point is that these are fundamental concepts which transfer well between any movement shooter. A few people asked for clarification on how to actually apply the reading stuff. For example, at Swagcat51 asked, so in practice we would focus on the enemy, use that information to predict where they will be, and aim there. And if we predict wrong, we predict again and aim there. That's correct. And then he asks, this can apply to strafe patterns or just directional change timings. So what I said to him is, you mostly try to comprehend the intention of their movement, which is usually strafe patterns, but it might help if I break down a clip of mine and show how I'm actually doing that in practice. So first I'll play at regular speed so you can see what it looks like. Very simple clip. That's intentional. Most fights are messy. This one can be broken down into some simple parts here. Okay, so I have already played against this guy, so I already know he likes a short strafe spam. So right out the gate, I'm just predicting short strafes. So I'm basically just planting my crosshair right on his head because I know he's just going to be strafing into it. Then, boom, he does a long strafe. I'm not on target anymore. My prediction that he'll stand there is now wrong. So this is where my misprediction happens. Now, perception comes in. I notice, hey, he's not under my crosshair anymore. So in this case, perception's really easy because there's nothing like tricky about this. It's just like, I think he's gonna move. So when he does, I'm not surprised at all. So after a normal amount of reaction speed, I realize, hey, I'm not on target. My prediction is he's probably gonna do more short strafes. And then that's exactly what happens. He tries short strafing more, and my crosshair is just sitting on top of his head while he does it, and he gets hit another few times in the head. And if I didn't make it clear, where comprehension comes into play here is understanding that what he's doing right here is short strafes. This isn't just crazy fast movement. This is the very simple, he's just short strafing right here. And then right here, when he moves, I'm like, oh, he did a long strafe. That's short strafes, that's a long strafe, that's short strafes. So that's comprehension. It's breaking it down into those parts that are really easy to understand and make it a lot easier to predict what's going to happen next. By comprehending the movement pattern, you're also able to learn to hit it as a pattern. So if you can recognize short strafes, then you can learn to hit short strafes. In this example, I'm just leaving my crosshair still in the middle of the strafes to hit the short strafes. There's any number of ways to hit a movement pattern, but first you have to comprehend what the pattern is before you can hit it. Something no one actually asked about, but came to my mind when I was answering questions, was the question of why is the way I broke down reading good? Because there's like any number of ways you can break things down. I'm often skeptical when I watch a video and it's broken down into like this formula. It usually feels kind of forced and fake and bad. But in this case, it arose very naturally. I'd have bad aim days and be like, I don't understand why my aim is bad right now. So over the years, I was able to figure out, oh, right now my aim's bad because of mouse control. Or I missed here because I couldn't see the target. It was too hard to see. So that'd be a perception issue. And then other times it'd be like, I can see what they're doing, but I don't understand it. It's too complicated. So that'd be comprehension, for example. So it's really helpful when you're missing to know why you're missing. So then you can train to fix that specific issue. Another common question is, where can I find more information on this topic? Some related materials you might find useful are Aimer7's Strafe Aiming 101 and Heuristic about Geometric Positioning and Applications. But don't be surprised if you find it impenetrable. Someone in the comments also introduced me to TF2 trick stabbing. You can find Ludi's rhythm trick stabbing tutorial on YouTube, which in a very developed theory covers the concept that the Quake community calls angles, meaning to get to the side of the opponent, which is on a basic level the same thing as dodging, although the context is very different. So the very fundamental concepts, such as cognitive empathy, are shared, but the applications are pretty different. As for the topic of my video specifically, I haven't seen anyone else cover it. I hadn't even 100% articulated it myself until I wrote the script for the video. So your best bet is probably going to be to just join the Discord server, discord.gg/OW1v1s, and just ask for information or advice. Also, studies have actually been done on perception training for athletes, in particular baseball players. They use low contrast training to improve their ability to see the ball. If you search scholar.google.com for related terms, you'll probably find more studies on related topics, and that could be helpful. Explain says, love the video. I want to ask, how would all of this tie into mirroring/anti-mirroring? This is a really good question. I think a lot of people are hazy on that relationship there. Movement aim came up a lot in the comments. Movement aim reduces the mouse control requirement to hit the shot after you correctly determine where to aim. So like I said before, there are any number of ways to land the shot once you know where to aim. Movement aim is just another tool in the toolbox to execute on your intentions. I should also mention that using movement aim, you can lead the opponent. So when you're movement aiming, they're also going to be trying to hit you. So you can manipulate them into doing what you want using your own movement. And that's actually something I was going to lightly touch on when I was going to cover how to counter specific types of aim. I was going to talk about people who over-rely on hard mirroring, how you can manipulate that. But I think in practice, the way you should think of movement aim is it's something you should have mastery over, where you can mirror or you can anti-mirror whenever you want, and you can mix them up. You can be in the middle of a mirror and switch it to an anti-mirror so that you can use it to help your aim without it hurting your dodge. That's the way I think of movement aim. So a few people said something to the effect of, dodging's easy, just do this one weird trick. This is probably obvious to most people, but there is no simple trick to dodge. It's your dodge versus their aim. If they read you, they're going to hit you. So if you're just doing one weird trick, any good aimer is going to quickly identify your one weird trick and hit it, especially if they've seen it before, which they almost certainly have. JR6394 asks, in reference to me saying that players learn the natural tendencies of other players, or the common tendencies, wouldn't this mean there's a natural cycle for dodging where players adapt to what is seen the most until the major strategy becomes the minority? And I said, that happens in 1v1s, especially if you played against the same person before. But in the regular game, the vast majority of people barely even attempt to dodge in the first place, let alone adapt to what they think you're expecting. So the answer to this question is basically yes, but also through experience, you'll understand how good the opponent is and you'll use that to inform your prediction. And usually the opponent is not good enough to be taking these mind games into account. And I mean, even at the highest levels, like if you're top 100 or top 10 Overwatch, you still are usually not going to be expecting your opponents to take this stuff into account. Goma says, great video, Mr. Devin. Do you think 1v1ing people on similar or higher skill levels is better for improvements? Players who are better than you expose weaknesses, force you to lock in, and push you to the next level, but they also put you under a lot of pressure, so it's harder to practice one specific thing without getting destroyed. Weaker opponents put less pressure, so you can practice specific stuff, but you can also learn bad habits if you aren't very careful. If you always play versus weaker opponents, you will almost certainly regress eventually. Handicaps, like reducing the damage of the better player, can partly alleviate both issues, but not fully. But more than anything, playing versus as many people as possible is best, because everyone plays different. If you only play versus one person, you'll get really good at beating them and how they play, but you might get completely destroyed by an overall weaker opponent just because they do something you aren't used to. Disturbed asks, how well do you think 1v1s translate to the actual game? Because isn't playing against the same opponents the same as memorizing bot patterns in Kovacs? So I'm doing this one next because it's related. This is actually two different questions. For the first one, I think 1v1s, at least in Overwatch, translate very well to aim and dodge in the actual game. And I think it's true for other games as well. Like I said earlier, Cestroid wants to 1v1 me in Marvel Rivals because he thinks it's going to help his mechanics, and he's a tournament player. Most comp aim scenarios are either simple smooth tracking, which you can easily practice in an aim trainer, or complex dodge situations that require good reading. And even if they aren't specifically trying to dodge you, say you're to their side and they're looking at something else, but they're still moving around, so they're hard to hit, these skills still translate to hitting that too, because you're comprehending what they're doing, and it'll help you hit them. So in most situations in the actual game, these basic concepts will definitely help if you understand them and can identify your weaknesses like that. And for the second part, isn't playing against the same opponents the same as memorizing bot patterns in Kovacs? It's not exactly the same, because unless the people you play against are extremely repetitive and boring, you'll never just memorize everything they do. But, like in my last response, playing against as many people as possible is important. To some degree, it is similar. Like, if you only play against the same people, or if you only play the same scenarios in Kovac, you're going to get overly specialized, or overly, we could use the word conditioned here too, to be expecting too narrow of a range of possibilities. And yes, that will definitely be a problem for you if you do that. Vinit Chauhan, I think that's his name, asks, do you ever practice 1v1 with a bot at max settings when you don't have anyone to play with? I usually have no problem getting a 1v1 partner because of the Overwatch 1v1 Discord server at discord.gg/OW1v1s. That's discord.gg/OW1v1s. Try it today. But on the rare occasion I can't find anyone, I use Recording Studio in VXVY, which is pretty good, but like I've said a bunch of times, playing against humans is really good. Goif Ascetic? Is that ascetic? I've only read it in books. Ascetic?
Ascetic.
Goif Ascetic asks, does projectile aim require additional steps for leading shots? No. It's pretty much exactly the same. You just have to predict further into the future. In practice, you might need more patience with your shots as you wait for them to do something more predictable. And there is a related question that no one mentioned, but I feel like mentioning because it comes up. It's something that kind of comes up in my videos a lot, which is projectile aim versus hitscan aim in terms of difficulty. What I'm about to say is actually not controversial for good aimers, but projectile aim is almost always easier, which new players find counterintuitive sometimes. Your accuracy with a projectile is reduced because the further into the future you have to predict, the less certainty there is. That makes it sound harder, but it's actually the exact same test of prediction skill you'd have with hitscan, just with a lower probability of success. So think of an aim trainer scenario. You can make it arbitrarily more difficult by increasing the move speed of the bot, but you're not actually making it more skillful, you're just reducing the expected accuracy of the player. This is analogous to projectiles. To compensate for the reduced accuracy, game devs give projectiles larger hitboxes, so they hit even if your prediction or mouse control was less precise. This reduces the dodge options of the opponent because the projectiles are too large to allow for more subtle movements. A really easy example is if you do a wall lick, it might work on the projectile player's aim, but if the projectile is too wide, it could hit even if they were aiming in the wrong spot. And this is also why projectile players often have a very flicky aim style. the precision requirement is much lower, so they're allowed to just flick every shot and the projectile will hit even if they actually missed. Meet Kotiyinsky asks, what crosshair are you using? And this might seem like a trivial question, but it's actually kind of worth mentioning. I use a tiny dot. It's a tiny green dot with a black outline. I use it because it makes it easier to notice when I'm off target. A normal size crosshair can mislead you into thinking you're more accurate than you actually are. So I found that the smaller the crosshair I use, the better my perception is. I'm less misled by my own crosshair. And then of course the trade-off is if you start to lose track of your own crosshair, that's really bad. So you want the most visible, smallest crosshair you can work with. Make your own luck, and I think some other people asked, how do I practice my dodge, basically? You just try stuff and see what works, and the kill cam is really useful for this if you play Overwatch. As you gain experience, you'll have a hunch as to what will work against whom, and you'll quickly adapt when it doesn't work. Also, after you practice dodging, you can do 80% of it without thinking. I'm usually too busy aiming to be thinking about my dodge, but I do occasionally throw in some conscious intentionality into it. SCFW explains basically he has very good prediction from playing a lot of Soldier in TF2, but he can be over-reliant on it and he gets tripped up by really good players doing what he's not expecting. Obviously, I've talked about this a bit before, but I kind of like what my response to him was here. So what I said to him was, yeah, many people over-rely on their expectations. Just keep your eyes open, as in, use perception, actually see. But then I was thinking, actually, the cliche, expect the unexpected, it makes a lot of sense here. If you don't expect the unexpected, when it does come, it takes a long time to recognize it and adjust. But if you're fully expecting something unexpected, like your prediction to be wrong, you're ready to react immediately. Taha says, Devin traded his hair for immense aim knowledge like Odin did his eye. I thought that was the best comment. So a comment a few people made was something to the effect of, the best players don't need to put all this thought into it, so you're wasting your time doing this theorizing, blah, 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 blah. There's two really big issues with this logic. First of all, even if it's true that prodigies don't need to think about what they're doing, 99.99% of people aren't prodigies. So if you play the game and you want to get better, you do need to think about this stuff, or you're at a disadvantage. Second of all, the idea that the best players don't need to think about this stuff isn't even true. Like I showed in the original video, pro players make these basic theoretical mistakes all the time. And I have even trained 1v1 with pro players before and helped them learn this stuff. For example, I spent hours 1v1ing Dove in SimVamp 1v1s at the time he was an Overwatch League player. And he was learning these concepts from playing with me. If I had come up with this theory at the time, it would have made it faster for him to improve. And he told me that he learned how to dodge from Owen, who is a non-pro player, but he's very good. So it's not like pro players just were born super good at everything. They have to learn this stuff too. Mars0006 asks something to the effect of, how do I know if my mouse control is good enough? And I told him, if you correctly predict the target's movement, but you fail to get your crosshair on it anyway, then you have a mouse control problem. And when you're training your mouse control, try to use scenarios as similar to the real game as possible. Most aim trainer scenarios fail to do this pretty badly. 1v1s and FFA tend to be pretty good for it. And there are some specific aim trainer scenarios that can be good, like the book club scenarios I mentioned earlier, I think are pretty good. Sub 5, that the combination of a super fast mouse pad with super fast skates and a very lightweight fingertip grip mouse has the highest skill ceiling out of any combination. I guess I tried playing on a polished HDP for a few months and I could never control it, so I gave up. So technically that means I lacked the skill to use it, but in practice, it's not like you're going to be held back by a mouse setup with more control. So it's kind of like giving yourself a handicap for no reason. So I don't really think about it like a certain peripheral setup has a higher skill cap. It's more like the ideal peripheral setup is one you don't have to think about ever. Like you just forget you have peripherals and you just focus on your actual aim. A couple people asked me for the workshop codes. H8A88, H8 H8A88 is the vamp code. It's actually specific settings of a more general code, which is KET00, which is Devin's Nightmare Realm. H8A8 is that, but with the vamp settings turned on and like specific settings that are good for vamp turned on. I use it like all the time. Like every time I play, I use it. And then there's NVX VUI, which I've mentioned a few times, which is Recording Studio. You can use that to record movements into the bot and play them back. I have a video up on how to use Recording Studio. And then also if you visit discord.gg/OW1v1s, you can check out the Workshop Codes channel, and there's a bunch of workshop codes there. A few people asked me about perception issues, like the target looks blurry to them and stuff like that. So like I said earlier, you can do visual clarity training and stuff and just focus more. But I think in regards to most people's questions, the real answer is just keep focusing on seeing, and your brain will get better at parsing the information. It will ignore the unnecessary information more, and it'll pick out the important details more, and you will see what you're trying to see better over time. For me in Overwatch, it took a long time because the game has a lot of clutter, but eventually your brain just gets really good at picking out what it needs to pick out, and then you can see clearer. Oh, and also a higher refresh rate monitor does help a lot. Like if you're on 60 FPS, you are at a disadvantage. I'm not gonna pretend that it's not true. Like I would not be playing on 60 FPS at all. I think up until about 240 hertz, it's really noticeable. And then above 240 hertz, it drops off pretty dramatically. Like I'm on a 390 hertz monitor, and I've tried playing on 240 hertz on it. I can tell the difference, but it's very subtle. So if you can get a 240 hertz monitor, you're pretty much good. But higher is always better. Austin Miller asks, most of the time when aim is talked about is through the lens of tracking, mostly soldier clips here. Are there any differences to the ideas presented if you narrow the scope to just point and click? So what I said to him is the concepts are the same, but since the shots come out less frequently, you don't have to move as often. I mean, to dodge. So in principle, you only have to move right before they shoot to make them miss. That's why in the Widow example clips, I'm barely moving. And Seeker even remarks that I'm standing still. And that's actually a common remark for good players who can't hit you when you're doing this. They'll say, he's just standing still, how can I not hit him? And that's why, because you just time your movement to make them miss right when they shoot. And then I said, also, dodge that might be pretty good versus Soldier might get you killed versus Widow or Ashe, since getting hit once or twice by Soldier during your short strafes isn't a big deal. But if that's the one hit a Widow or Ashe lands, you just die. So there are some nuances, but it's the same concepts. And I was talking from the perspective of dodging there, but you can just flip it around for aim. Like if they're just trying to time their movements right when you shoot, that's what you have to be anticipating to hit the shot. And then Charlotte Creedon, could you do something for Tracer as she has a lot faster mag dump than say Soldier that would make predicting or something harder? And I said, Tracer basically resets the process every time she blinks. So you need exceptionally fast comprehension to understand what the target is doing after you blink. Elcho Chos asked, how is it possible that your pull strength is practically the same as mine, yet your pushing strength is like 20 times better? This is not a diss, by the way. You're so much stronger than me. Just genuinely curious how that's even possible. And I said to him, I trained my bench press way more than I trained my pull-up, so it's probably just that. But I think my strength was relatively balanced. My combined pull-up, weighted pull-up, body weight plus the weight was about 300 pounds. And then my bench press was like 335, so it's not that different. Barcode asks, how can I improve my aim in general? Should I play more Kovacs as I always do? And another question, how do you balance life and video game? Me and my ADHD are ruining my life. I said, Kovac's really good for mouse control, like general mouse control. But like I said before, the scenarios are usually not very specific to many games. Like in Overwatch, the targets are much smaller than what you're going to shoot in Kovac, and they're not going to be moving as far, but they're going to be faster with instant excel, etc. So 1v1s in Overwatch are really good. In a lot of games, 1v1s are really good. QQ100 in Overwatch is really good as well. But I still play Kovac to warm up. And then for the other question, I believe I also have pretty bad ADHD, and I'm not really a great person to ask for this because I'm like just figuring it out myself. But one tip that is definitely very helpful for sure is to make lists of what you want to do And the more you break things down, the better. So like for this video, instead of just saying do the Q&A video, I'll be like, do the Q&A video, and then the first part is compile all the questions people asked. And it might even be compile the ones off of Discord, compile the ones off YouTube, and then I'll list just every single thing I need to do, and then I can just do one thing, and it might only take like 10 minutes, and then I'll be like, okay, I'm gonna check that one off, and then I can just go to the next, and it helps so much to stay on track and not get distracted, and then also have a little bit of a reward because you're checking things off and you're making progress all the time. Flying Scoutsman asks, any plans to make a Soldier Vamp workshop code that supports up to like 8 people in a lobby? He's basically saying, can you make Thunderstruck like from Quake LG in Overwatch? And I had the exact same idea after I played Quake LG the first time, but I have not gotten around to making it because it's kind of a pain in the ass, and I've just been doing a lot of shit. But eventually I would like to make that. It would be it would be a chill way to do 1v1s, yeah. Some Russian guy, presumably because his name is written in Cyrillic, said, where is Mad Bad Man? And I said, somewhere in Russia, I think, smiley face. Okay, this Q&A took a lot longer than I thought it would. I think I probably put too much effort into it relative to the returns, but I hope someone out there found some of my answers helpful. I tried to answer basically every question I got, but if I missed your question or if you have a new question, feel free to ask, and I will probably respond to you in the comments, and then if I get enough questions, I'll make a second Q&A video, although probably on the second Q&A video, I'm going to put less effort into editing.